In late 1970, though Fotheringay had been formulating material for a new album, Denny announced that she was disbanding the group in order to pursue a solo career.
We were in the studio recording the second album, and we recorded maybe, I don't know, three or four tracks maybe, and really I think the people handling Sandy's career, I think that they really, really wanted her to have a solo career. I think they felt that she was possibly wasting her time with a band when they could see so much potential for her. Which, you know, in some ways was right. She did have huge potential. And I think the only thing that stopped that potential going sort of all the way, so to speak, was her own nature. She was very loyal to the people that she was working with. She made a point of being friends and understanding us individually. She had lots of time for us. And it was important, I think it was very important for her to have people around her that she liked and trusted. And I think that's what she had. And for all our shortcomings as players at the time, I think she preferred that situation to the big the cold, hard world as it can be, with maybe you might have the best players in the world, but they might not necessarily be your true friends, if you like. You know.
In early 1971, after a farewell performance with Fotheringay, Denny was asked by Led Zeppelin to record a session for the Battle of Evermore. With the huge global appeal of Zeppelin, the recording was a chance for Denny to showcase her talent alongside a band that enjoyed considerable commercial success.
She'd won the Melody Maker Best Girl Singer Award for a couple of years running, and she'd literally bumped into Robert Plant at one of the awards ceremonies. And I mean, Zeppelin were, absolutely massive. I mean, Zep 3 had just come out, and the anticipation for Led Zeppelin 4 was, I mean, they were the new Beatles. I mean, there was this incredible sense of anticipation about what Zeppelin were doing next. So Sandy appearing on Battle for Evermore, I mean, it should have got her an incredible profile and audience, but it's almost like she's jinxed, you know, that it just didn't do it. I mean, she's still the only ever guest vocalist on the Led Zeppelin album, you know, one of the most successful British bands ever. She's the only ever featured vocalist, and yet probably 99 people out of 100 wouldn't know that. And time will tell us
you sort of know that she's on it, but it's not exactly sort of in your face, you know. I think the way she looked at it was just something that she did, you know. She was asked to do a sort of scat kind of thing, you know, just sort of jamming in a way, and she did the best she could. None of us at the time were seasoned session players or anything like that. We didn't have a huge amount of experience in the studio, and so I think she just did the best she could, and it was fine. It was great, really, and still is.
In spring 1971, Denny began work on her debut solo album, The North Star Grassman and the Ravens. Ironically, all the members of Fotheringay were enlisted to record the album, and Richard Thompson assisted in the production.
Well, it's the story of North Star Grassman was really sort of almost comical, because we had an unfortunate day in the studio when Sandy was forced to come in, and she was in tears. You know, it was against everything that she believed in, but she had to come in and say that the band, she was leaving the band and she was pursuing her solo career, and everyone was gutted, but you know, that's what happened. But we all remained friends, and we were the musicians that she knew and liked. So anyway, I think she signed this contract as a solo career, for a solo career, and when the recording came up, she just asked us to do it. So we were sort of back in the studio, but not as Fotheringay, but as sort of session players, if you like, which is the other side of the coin. And I can only talk from my, you know, personally, from how I felt at the time. So it's sort of all like emotions. So we had this kind of little secure group that we liked. Then it was sort of ripped apart in the name of business and career and all the rest of it. And then we all had to go in and pretend nothing had happened and make North Star Grassman. And as much as I still loved all her songs and was very fond of Sandy, something had split us asunder a bit, I felt, emotionally. So it was harder to get the same kind of feeling, if you like. It was that much harder.
When it was drunk, the ship it was sunk, the shot it was dead, all the sorrows were drowned, the birds they were clouds.
North Star Grassman is quite a difficult album. I mean, it's got some great songs on there, but it's probably Sandy at her most introspective and her most sort of lyrically obscure. So it wasn't the great solo leap that perhaps people were hoping for at the time. Which is why I think it was a shame that the second Fotheringay album was never made, because I suspect it would have ended up as a better record than North Star Grassman and the Ravens.
They stood upon the deck as the ship went out to sea. The wind it took the sails and left the land a memory.
One of the reasons North Star Grassman didn't sort of set the world alight was because, in a way, I mean, I could be wrong, but I felt that Sandy was very much a reluctant solo artist. She didn't really want to go there, and it was only through pressure, I think, that she was almost sort of forced to do that. Really, she was more than happy with a little group with Fotheringay and just doing that stuff. There's no ambition involved. It was just trying to make some nice music and hoping people liked it. Nothing more than that. And suddenly it was like, oh, you know, yeah, you know, you've got to live up to what you are. You're like voted #1 singer, and you know, you could be a big star and so on. And I don't think it didn't suit her. She just didn't want it, I don't think. So it was probably just equally as hard for her as it was for the rest of us to do it.
The North Star Grassman and the Ravens was both a critical and commercial failure, attracting the kind of indifferent response that Denny often found wounding. In March 1972, Trevor Lucas began producing a follow-up album, on which Denny had been working since the previous November, and in September '72, the self-titled Sandy was released.
I think the thing about the Sandy album is they're just great songs. You know, I think Listen, Listen is a fantastic song. It's like that sort of clarion call that she did with Ashley on Legion Leave Come All Ye. It's that anthemic sort of involving song. It Suits Me Well, Music Weaver. There's just some great songs on there. Also, very well chosen Dylan cover, Tomorrow Is a Long Time, was not known at the time. And one of Dylan's, I think, most haunting love songs, and she sings it beautifully. And the singing, the playing, very quite stripped back. The production, it's quite sparse, but she's got this richness to her singing.
And the fretful sailors calling out their woes as to the waves that tossed.
Her kind of homage to Dylan, It'll Take a Long Time, which I think is on Sandy, is one of the best songs she ever wrote, I think. And it's a lovely vocal, very kind of reflective, mournful, sensitive vocal performance on that, very quiet, and a lovely track. You know, you listen to that late at night and you think, yeah, that's the Sandy I know and love.
I think the second album is stronger than the first. The songwriting is very fine. She's deliberately trying to be less introspective and, if not more commercial, certainly more accessible. I mean, I remember there's one track on it, Tony Blackburn even made his record of the week, I think. The David Bailey cover shoot. You know, I mean, there's we didn't use the word back in the early 70s, but you know, there's something of an attempt at a makeover going on here from the front cover onwards. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty successful. And if you had to single out one of her 4 solo albums, this is probably the strongest.
It's an album on its way somewhere, in the sense that it's probably not the best album she did by a long shot, but you can see that it's a bit directionless. You know, there's some trad on it, perhaps a little bit more traditional material than you would expect, but some fabulous songs that she's written. I mean, The Lady, It Suits Me Well, great songs.
That's just a great record. That one is, out of all her records, and there's lots of good ones, if anything deserves a spotlight put on it, to me it's that one. And that's not false modesty because I'm not on it. I just think it's the songs are just the songs are just incredible. She sings great, it sounds great, the accompaniment is just it's just a great record.
After the release of Sandy, an unusual twist occurred when Trevor Lucas joined Fairport Convention. With Denny touring in the UK and America, as well as writing material for her next solo project, Like an Old-Fashioned Waltz, Fairport had once again come between her and Lucas, and in the winter of 1973, she decided to rejoin the band.
Well, she was I don't know, I can't remember now whether she was actually married to Trevor, but she was his, you know, girlfriend, and she wanted to be with him. When she was on the road and he wasn't in the band, so she would be unhappy. And when he was in the band and she was at home, she was unhappy. She wanted to be with Trevor. So that was a big thing. And then a female voice in the band, and especially Sandy's, well, I mean, you'd have to be a raving lunatic to think anything other than brilliant.
With Denny back in the band, Fairport hit the road, performing a series of shows in the US, as well as 2 nights at the Sydney Opera House, one of which was recorded for a live album released in 1974 as Live Convention. The gigs often followed an odd pattern, with large parts of the set occupied by Denny performing material from her new solo album, Like an Old-Fashioned Waltz.
I saw Sandy with Fairport around the time of just after she'd rejoined, and they do sort of Fairport Greatest Hits, but she would then take the piano and do stuff like Solo and Like an Old-Fashioned Waltz, which was great. I mean, it was, you know, 2 for the price of 1. I mean, it was a great show.
While you're in the mood for dancing, I'll play you Like an Old-Fashioned Waltz, you know. Roses are red and violets are blue.
I think it's ironic that Like an Old-Fashioned Waltz came out, and again, I think a much underrated album. And again, I just cannot understand why that record is not better known. You know, I think it's got 2 of her best ever songs. I think Solo and Like an Old-Fashioned Waltz are just fantastic songs. You know, if any other British female singer did Like an Old-Fashioned Waltz, it would be, you know, it'd be on Desert Island Discs every other week. You know, it's a fantastic song, beautifully orchestrated, beautifully sung. It's got that lovely sort of melancholic, old-fashioned, empty ballroom feel to it.
It has that kind of triteness almost about it. Roses are red, violets are blue. That's how it starts. And yet it goes into something else, and you think, hang on a minute, it's not a nursery rhyme she's singing, she's actually singing something a lot deeper here. And yet it's kind of tweeness, but there's a kind of a darker, heavier undercurrent. Like an Old-Fashioned Waltz is actually my favourite Sandy album, certainly of her solo stuff. It includes, I think, the best song she ever wrote, which was Solo. It's my favourite Sandy Denny song because it has that ability. It's clearly about her personal life. It's about her being alone again, about splitting from bands. It's almost her realisation that she's destined to be alone personally and also in terms of a band. You know, that's her destiny almost. Anybody can identify with, you know, those lyrics. Anybody can recognise the sentiments that she's singing about in the song. But it's also one of her best vocal performances. And you know, at that time, some will say her voice had gone. You know, once her voice wasn't what it used to be when she didn't have that kind of purity that she had with Fairport first time around. And that may be true, but kind of that kind of cracked element, you know, that kind of lived-in feel that she'd acquired by that time, whether, you know, through the hard life she'd had, the hard drinking and all the rest of it, it does affect your throat. And that clearly had taken its toll. But I don't know, it invested her with something else, you know, that kind of real reality, I suppose, you know. And Solo, when she sang Solo and she hit those big notes, that was something that really, really cut home with that song. I think the song itself is a great song. I think her vocal performance on it is terrific, and I love the arrangement too.
The orchestration, the production, everything about that record is fantastic, and yet, you know, it just sold to the devoted few. It just seemed that Sandy couldn't get out of that sort of folky ex-Fairport ghetto, and then when she rejoins Fairport, it just almost compounds that. So I think she was, again, it's that jinx, it's that Sandy jinx. You know, she makes, you know, this fantastic record, and it sold, you know, reasonably well, and I think Emmylou Harris went on to cover Like an Old-Fashioned Waltz. But I mean, it seemed to be that whenever she or Fairport played a gig, they knew virtually everybody in the audience. You know, the audience was not expanding, and it must have been incredibly frustrating. You put all that effort into a record like, you know, Rising for the Moon or Like an Old-Fashioned Waltz, and it's still not doing it. And you must think, well, what, yeah, Christ, what else do I have to do? It must have been incredibly frustrating.